Good morning. And Monica's one of the few people in Colorado. Hey, hi Monica. Love to see you here. Um, it's so wonderful to have people from all over the world essentially in our little group here in the mornings. Um, anyway, when I think about these, it's like I sit down and I think, oh, I'm going to talk about all these different things when I get on. And then they all kind of just disappear, and I get a feeling for the energy of the day and what needs to be said. So it's almost like I'm channeling, but not in a way that I'm channeling some outward thing. It's like I'm channeling myself, sort of, and actually the energy is driving the conversation. So this is kind of how I like to work with horses is I'd like to step in and get a feel for a minute, and then it kind of tells me what direction to go. So I feel like I'm not trying to control it, but then once I get some direction, I'll go in that that direction. So with that said, our theme of this month on the newsletter was the Goldilocks effect. And that's always one where I feel like, hold on a second, I'm going to admit, David, um, where no matter what you do, it seems like there's something wrong with it or it's not quite right. And you're always trying as a person creating content and different things. It's like you're always trying to figure out what is it that is going to hit with people. What are they going to say? Yeah, this is just right. It fits just right. And I spent a lot of time in my life doing that, where it's like, oh, I'm going to make it this way so that people will like it, or I'm going to make it this way so they would like it. And now it's almost where I have to go, well, this is what it is, and people will come here if they like it. So that I'm no longer trying to be something I'm not. It's like, and one of the disappointing things sometimes it's like, well, I'm nobody's cup of tea. You get into that part of it, like, why are so few people coming this direction? And part of it is that there's so much right now. There's so much out there. And I think people have to sample a lot of different things before they find what hits for them. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I had a conversation with a client the other day, and it's like, well, what's great about my work and where I sit here is that there's a lot of people out there priming people for just this thing, for landing here. And they almost have to go through those other things first before they can really start to go, yeah, this is it, or this is what I want to do, or this isn't what I want to do. Okay. But you need more information before you make decisions. And in my horse journey, I went through a lot of different things and I learned a lot. And I learned as much about what I didn't want to do as I did about what I do want to do. And all of those people and all of those situations shaped where I sit today and how I work today. And I'm under no illusion that people would want to be just where I am, but they're going to find their way through and create it in the way that feels right for them and how they live and what their beliefs are and all of that. So I feel like I'm just sitting here in this spot, being who I am, and people may come in and say, "Oh, I like some of that. I'd like to do that," and then they go and do something else, and that's okay. That's We don't want to create a cult where there's a group think and you have to all think this way. I'm okay with everything that everybody wants to think as long as it's not hurting our horses. That's where I draw the line. If it feels like it's really abusive, I'm probably going to say something. Otherwise, go experiment, go find your place, go do these things. And I'm going to say how do I teach what I do? Because it's been a lifetime of all these different things. And I could never go back and say this was the formula for how I got to where I'm at now. I can do the best I can now to say, as a scientist, I know this is what I'm doing, that's what I'm doing. So here's how you would do those things. But how I actually acquired those abilities, I couldn't go through that many things, nor could everybody else. And so you just go through your life and you decide what you want to get better at, and then you work on that, and then you go through and everything evolves. Okay, so when I think of this program, and David's on here and he's helped me, and Dr. Ev, and as far as trying to put together what it is I do. And that's where Jane Hansen here, she's one of my clients, she's like, Susie, sit down and tell me what is it? What is the bigger picture? And it's like, oh, we do need a bigger picture. And so that's what I spent time doing, is putting together the bigger picture of all the things, the elements that I think are involved in this that you could work on. And so that's going to be one of the next big books that Dr. Ev and I are, working on here. And that one is kind of, maybe I think of it as the legacy, what I'm leaving for future generations is, this is the actual Colonel's secret recipe for how you do this. And it's a generalized view of, here's all the skill sets you need to acquire. This is how they all fit together. But I'm not going to be able to tell everybody all the different elements of how you get that skill set. I can do some of them. I can show you some of those things. But part of this journey is that you figure those out too. How do I get there? What do I need to do? And so that's a kind of an exciting thing for me to think about. And I was telling Dr. Ev the other day, it's like I went and I thought, oh, it was really rough last few weeks. I mean, just really rough, where I wanted to go, oh, I'm just tired of this. Not because of the people per se, but just with the technology and the roadblocks coming in the way. And it's like, oh, that's when I know I'm onto something, is when it feels like everything is conspiring to stop it from coming out. Because I really believe what I have to say is going to be impactful for people, and absolutely for the horses. And when I get on the edge of something new, Dr. Ev and I call them the gremlins come out, and they start making my life miserable, like picking away at little tiny things that just don't work, and then you have to spend a lot of time going and fixing that. It's those kind of annoyances, okay? Or it's Facebook. Facebook is so good at this, that it can put something out in front of me that is so devastating that I just think, oh, there's no point anymore. And that happened yesterday. Like, oh my gosh, are you serious? That we are still thinking that way, and people with a big voice are still voicing these outdated beliefs. Okay, and then I think, oh, what's the point? But I realize that's the point where I need to start continuing and really saying, yeah, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to put this down. It may not be time for this current generation or a few more generations, but it's got to be spoken. So that's kind of my little soapbox for the morning. And, it relates to that Goldilocks effect a little bit, because the things that have been done in the past, and I would say dominance-based training has been the dominant theory for a very long time now. And I feel like it's starting to crumble. And as it's crumbling, those who are involved in that are doing their best last stand at keeping it relevant. And they're trying to shame people into doing that. And this is the Goldilocks effect that I see. People come to me and say, but my barn is full of dominance-based belief systems in the training, and I get bullied if I don't follow those tenets that they have. They make fun of me. They, make it hard for me to do this work. And so there's a constant barrage of negativity coming their way when they're trying to do something different. And it's the same thing that I'm experiencing, and that anybody that wants to make a change and be different will experience in their life, is that the dominant theory is going to try to take you down. And so your decision is to say, am I doing this because I need to be accepted by my group? Is it okay for me to do these things when I know in my heart and gut that it's harmful for my animal? And that I feel like an imposter because I believe a different way, but I'm doing something not in alignment with what my belief system is. I mean, this is all the Goldilocks thing that we all have to question and say, you know what? Am I going to be influenced by peer pressure to stay the same? Or am I going to be brave enough to take a stand? And this was all really difficult for me back in the, how long ago was that? Early 90s on the ranch in the middle of ranching company of ranching community, and you're doing something different with your horses than everybody else is. And it was really brutal. And I hid out at the ranch and did my own thing. And I thought, why does it bother them that I'm doing something different? Why is that so bothersome for these other people? And it's like, because in their heart and soul and probably at their gut, there's an element of truth in what I was doing. And it illuminated very strongly how they were either not able to do it or not able to break from that Goldilocks, like, oh, I have to be with the group and have to think like everybody else, you know. And so I think this is our biggest challenge, and I hear it constantly from people, my clients, can't do this work in front of people. Ah, is that sad? What do we do about that? Do we stop or do we just do what we do? And I know, again, the other side is not not always nice about when you do something different. So I completely understand it. And I did see a post yesterday where it was pretty vehement about this is how it is. And if you don't think this way, it's like you are silly, and I'm like, wow, I think differently, but I don't think I'm silly. I think it works for me. And I think that's the biggest thing we have to say is in the Goldilocks effect. Some like their porridge cool. Some like their porridge hot. Some like it in between. How did you like yours today, Dr. F? Was it warm, cool, hot, tepid? Yeah. And really what the question I see coming up is I see this surge in, oh, you have to do these dominant based techniques because it'll keep you safe. And, there's all these really compelling arguments about why you should be doing it. And it's like, oh yeah. And relationships are bad or, whatever they're saying, you need compliance and you need obedience. And this is how you stay safe. And it's like, oh God, I never did those things. And guess what? 50 years of horses, I never had an accident. I didn't follow that belief system. I did it differently because I am different than that person that's teaching dominance-based things. I don't have the physical strength and the size and the mentality of that, nor do I want the same thing in my relationships that that person does. I'm okay. I don't go bother them that they're doing something because their relational goals, the way they want to operate, is not the way I want to. But I'm not going to make them come over here and say, you have to do it this way. No, I'm just going to do it the way I want to do it. And I think about, and I may have spoken about this before, that, a lot of us, my clients are my age, most of my clients are my age, and they represent me as a woman and aging and all those kind of things. And it's like, my goals and my abilities are much different than a 30-something-year-old male. So therefore, I need to do things differently. I've told people before, I need to learn, if I want to continue doing horses, I need to learn how to work smarter, not harder. And that's the genesis of the work that I'm doing. I'm going to start to use my brain and my energetic abilities, and I'm going to hone those so that I can still be doing this when I'm 100 and something years old. And I don't need to have those physical abilities anymore because these mental, emotional, and energetic abilities are so strong that there's no need for the other. And that's when I'm saying I'm going to work smarter, not harder. Okay. And I also had this conversation with someone and like, oh, it's hard for us to let go of so many of those tenets and those belief systems that have been put into us over the decades, right? About horses and how they operate and what they do. And on the converse side of that, think about in the collective of the horse world, they have to give up their belief systems about what relationships with human beings look like. So there's not only change coming from our end that is necessary, there's got to be change coming from the collective of the horses themselves. Okay, so now this is part of the paradigm shift. We've got to all change. Okay, so that's kind of one of my things on the Goldilocks. And let me see what else we asked. I'm just looking at my questions here. And I think this is one that I really felt strongly. That first one that I put, are you skeptical of techniques or approaches that seem too easy? And I feel like that's a huge one out there right now. That there's this drive for scientific evidence, and the bigger words this person uses, the more authority they have, the more intelligence they have, the more that system that they're promoting is working. And in some industries in the human world, that is true. But I have to think about it in terms of who is it that we're working with? Horses. Do they need intellectual complexity? No, they don't. So why would I use intellectual complexity when interacting with that horse? No. I would go to a place where that horse and I can converse in a way we both understand. Okay, so if you read my new book, Woven by Words, it's very small. It's a very small book packed full of information, but it's written at a level that the horses understand. It's how you converse with a horse in a way that you don't have to use force because they can understand what you're talking about. Okay. And in no way is it being dumber, because in no way do I believe horses are less intelligent than me or other animals. It's just that their intelligence is different. Okay. And so I'm going to step in because they have amazing energetic intelligence, far superior to any human I've really come across. They have emotional intelligence. That's one of their keys. Look at the size of their amygdala. An amygdala processes emotional information. Look at the size of their heart. Their heart processes or receives emotional information and processes it. Both of those two structures in the horse are far larger in comparison to their body size than ours are, suggesting that perhaps they are very good at processing and speaking through emotions. Okay, so that's just one of examples of some of the intelligence, and I'm going to honor that animal's intelligence, and I'm going to try to improve my energetic and emotional intelligence so that I can speak more clearly to them. Okay, so this is part of this work. Okay, and look at how some other training programs, they shut down those two intelligences in a horse. Okay, now you've got that horse is like, okay, now I got to speak the way you do through force or through whatever other means, okay, now the horse is out of their element. Now you're going to have more trouble communicating with that horse. Okay. So when I think about everything I've done, it's been very careful. I've been analyzing and trying to figure out how horses do what they do and how they communicate and make myself more available and better at doing that type of communication rather than asking them to come and step into this world and do what we do. And look at how humans, look at the level of anxiety in the human race right now, uncertainty. Nobody's settled. They've disconnected from their bodies. They've disconnected from their intelligences that could help them move through life better. And they've intellectualized everything. Okay. And they think that's going to solve the problem. No, it's not going to solve the problem. Yeah. And we'll lose ourselves in the process. So that's kind of the genesis. And I'm going to be honest in this group, like that when I put the book out, I saw somebody else's book come out at the same time, and it was just the opposite. It was like all the quantum physics and it's like the big words, and it's like, oh, I'm sure that book is going to do a whole lot better than that little tiny book in the corner. But it's not going to impact that horse in the same way. It's going to have zero, if any, impact on that horse's ability to relate to a human. If you saw Darlis put a Facebook post, Dr. Ev brought it to my attention because I didn't have time to look at the Facebook, but she had all her horses and her mule lined up, and she's like, oh, here's the book. And, it was cute because it's like, these animals love this book. If they were to put a review on Amazon, they would rate it high, but they don't have the voice. So, I think we could do some funny little Amazon reviews. My horse rates this as a 5, and then here's what I felt really like dreamy when I listened to this book. It's like it really hit my heart. That would be kind of funny, is to have the actual review from a horse or a mule as far as what was your impact, what was this book's impact on you. And for me, it's like getting over that feeling of like, wow, I really look foolish putting out a book about stories with horses compared to this very authoritative person that has a lot of followers, and they put out a book with lots of big words, and wow, I kind of feel foolish. And then I thought, no, don't make it about you. It's not about you. You didn't write it for you. You wrote it for the horses. And I just know what impact the stories have had on horses, and that's why I felt a need to do it. And I think we can kind of segue a little bit into, what do I want to do as far as the book club and moving forward with that. I think what we'll try to do with all the technology on our side, we're going to try to do a book club next month, the first one. And I'll probably announce it in the next newsletter when it is, and I'll put it on Facebook and all that. But I really want to delve into what are we doing when we're reading stories or telling our horse's story. And it's like we are now enforcing and helping ourselves learn how to communicate energetically and emotionally. That's why I wrote that book. It's a veiled attempt to get people to start to work on some of the skill set they need to be able to be better communicators with their horses. And storytelling. They think they're telling their horse's story and that it's all about the horse, but really it's equally as much about the person learning to do that and learning to speak in a different way and to have a lot of awareness of your words and the emotions behind them and practicing that. And so, this book doesn't have to be big, because really those are the two main things that we're working on. And it doesn't have to be complicated either, because I tell people in the book, go back to reading to your horse the way you would read to a toddler that was sitting on your lap. And how much fun, and how much that child enjoys that reading time. How many little kids do you know that don't want a bedtime story, or grandma, come tell me a story? And having that relational piece of that storytelling. I sit on my grandma's lap and she tells me a story. I mean, I can think back to my childhood, and boy, that was a really big highlight. It's the same way with the horses. It's really interesting because they just go, oh, you want a story about whatever? And they're like, oh, I love the story. And you could get their attention and keep them with you without doing all the dominance-based things like running them around and doing all those other things. I don't have to do that because I have stories in my pocket, and I can get a horse to connect pretty quick with a story, and at a very, very deep level. Not at that superficial, yeah, they're looking at me level. I got their attention because they're afraid if they look away, they might get in trouble. No, I've got them wanting to be in the relationship rather than being forced to be in a relationship. That's the difference. I don't want to force someone to be in a relationship with me. So I'm going to work on being somebody would want to have a relationship with. And I have that same philosophy with the horse. I'm not going to force that horse into a relationship with me. I'm going to let them come to me and ask for, well, I'd like to be in a relationship. I like what you have to offer. And when you see the difference between when you have a forced relationship that's, I use forced relationship, but a constructed relationship. Think about all the horsemanship we've ever been taught. We are trying to construct a relationship with that horse. Make them have a relationship with us. We're going to run them around. We're going to do all these things. And yeah, that works. They connect to us at some level. But is that the relationship you want? That's the one where I say, no, that's not my relationship that I want. I want the deeper emotional relationship. So I'm going to use a different tactic. I'm going to be different and offer something of value to that horse so that they want to come and be in that space with me. And you notice the difference between a constructed and this type of relationship. Is the constructed one, there's a level of tension in that horse. There's a level of obedience. You can feel it, like, oh, I better do it. And, there's some tension in there. Versus when you tell a horse a story and they connect with you in this other way, the connection is really soft. It's very respectful. And it is, they're there. It's almost like you can't get rid of them, so that to me is really what I want, just as a human, but it might not be what some other person wants. That might make them feel very uncomfortable because they don't want deep relationships. They want superficial relationships. So they're going to be intimidated by that type of a connection. Okay, so I'm just giving them the benefit of the doubt. Like, you don't like that, you go do the thing you do. You're happy over there, that's fine. It's a lot of work over there compared to over here, but do what you want to do. So again, just giving you guys that heads up, because I think part of this newsletter and these Saturday meetings is for me to verbalize and familiarize people with, where am I coming from? What am I really doing? And is it for, your question is that for me? And again, back to the start of this, I'm no longer going to change what I do to make sure I get more people on board. I'm going to do what I do. And then the people will either come or they'll go. Okay. And that's life here. But it makes it easier for me because then I can be authentic and not be thinking, oh, well, I should change. I should use bigger words in my next book because then I get more people to listen to it. I don't want more people listening. I want more horses listening. So that's my 2 cents this morning. So, Dr. Ebb, do you have anything that you want to add to this?
Wow. Um, I was just reading the chat, so um, it'll take me a second. Um,
Sure.
I think I said in the chat that telling the stories to the horses is helping me to, my tendency is always to visualize disaster. And the storytelling is helping me to overcome that because I'm starting off with kind of a little script. I've started writing I have a 10-month-old filly. I've started writing her a storybook, and I'm finding that to be really helpful because I just spend some time with her every day, telling her a story and telling her a positive story about, usually about some fun thing I've done with a previous horse or adventures I've had with my old gelding that she lives with. Um, and she just gets so soft when I'm telling her a story. It's really lovely. Um, So, yeah, it's a wonderful way to build that relationship without having to use force. Um,
Mhm.
we we really tested our relationship yesterday because um, Philly has run into the fence or something with her head and is sore right over the noseband or right under where the noseband of the halter would sit. So for the past week or so, I've been looping a lead rope around her neck and leading her around like the old horses. And something startled her last night, and I had my left hand full of other things. So I just had one hand on this looped lead rope. And she could have done something really scary, and she didn't. She just kind of did a little scoot forward and went in a circle around me. And then she was like, oh, okay, you're here. It's all good. We're fine. And we went about our business. And it's like, wow. What a great way to build a relationship with a young horse, because if I were using fear-based training, I don't think she would have come back to me quite so softly and so easily. So yeah,
Cool.
um, I'm I'm getting a lot out of this. So thank you.
Oh, good. And I didn't pay her to say that, I promise. It's like I said, I would love it where the horses are on, and we can see in a part of the course when the book club, whatever you want to call this thing that we're going to do, it's like it's actual video of horses as you read the stories to them, and being able to point out to people, here's the difference in this connection, in this communion that we're creating versus what does it look like when you do it in the dominance based method that we've all been taught, right? And so it's like training your eye to go, is that what I want, just a reaction, or do I want a thoughtful response from my horse that's soft? Uh, and and a lot of that, through the storytelling, and Lonnie's been nice enough to let us see one of those videos, just a short one on the Facebook group, but I've got some longer ones where Nancy, the administrator for the group, I worked with her new horse and told her a story for the first time, and it was beautiful what that horse did. And I'm going to have that video in there because that is a very, very different feel to the when the horse connects than I ever got through running him in the round pen and then getting him to, come in. That felt good at the time, felt good. It felt very powerful at the time when I was taught to do the round pinning that way. but this is a totally different feel. And it's that horse deciding, yeah, I would like to have that relationship. That's, to me, that's a safer type of horsemanship, because I never worried about my horses, running off, or, if they got scared, leaving me behind, right? Never happened. And all the time that I rode them up in the flat tops wilderness of Colorado, and, whatever I asked them to do, I never felt like if something happened, they were going to leave. In fact, I had many situations where something did happen and they did not leave. And my friends' horses left. And we, at the time, had to go get an airplane and go fly over the flat tops wilderness looking for a horse with a saddle on and a bridle on and all. Yeah. I, I never worried about that with my horses. If something happened, they were going to come back to me, because that was where the relationship was. That was where the safety was. So if you get the book and you look in the last part, there's something I call the rewrite story I don't know if that is chapter 6 or something. The last pictures in the rewrite story are my first horse I had that I bred. I had horses before him, but the very first horse I bred. And that horse, when I think of a horse as being like all together and put together, and not in a physical way, but as much as he had this solidity to him as far as his mental and emotional state. He was solid. He had confidence. But it could have turned into something that was combative if I'd have wanted to do that. But no, I did a different type of training. And so the pictures at the end, the first two pictures, are his very first trail ride after I rode him 6 times, 6 rides on this horse. And we went on this nice, I thought it was going to be a nice little trail ride around a lake. It's all flat. It's like lovely, and it was good for the first half. And then I thought, oh, okay, we're halfway through. Should I turn around and go back the way we came or continue on? I'm like, oh, yeah, it's been so great. We'll just continue on this trail. Well, all of a sudden, the trail turns into fallen trees that he's really having to almost crawl over the top of. And here's this young horse, first trail ride. I'm not even asking. He's just like, yeah, okay, trees in the way, and we're going this way, okay. Um, Crawls through those trees, and I'm like, oh boy, this is not what I wanted his first experience on the trail to be. I'm gonna lose trust with this horse because of what I've asked him. And he's just going along like, yeah, okay, every day. I just go over these trees, and then at the you'll see the next picture in that series is him going through a little creek, pretty like substantial, lots of running water, no hesitation, just going through the creek. And then like, oh, I'm so thankful for this horse. But really what I was thankful for was the relationship I had with this horse, the trust that I had with him. And then the very end of that trail, when I can see the trailer, but between us is a gigantic beaver pond. Not one you could just go, there was no way around because it was boggy every way around that. The only solution now was we're going to have to turn around, go through all those fallen trees, and it's going to be dark by the time we're going through there. That's really dangerous. Or we're going to have to ask him to swim that pond. I'm like, great. At that point, I don't care about my saddle. It's like, okay, this is okay. He swam through the pond. Not because I kicked him, not because of anything, but I'm like, there's a trailer, we could go home. And he's like, I got it. Next day, I mean, there's another hour and a half ride home in the trailer after that. And I'm thinking that I just ruined my relationship with this horse because I asked too much of him on this first ride because of my own stupidity, my own lack of planning or whatever that was. And I was kicking myself all the way home, and I was just kind of apologizing to him and telling him how good he did. I was so proud of him and all that. And The next day, I go home, put him out, and the next day I'm thinking, oh, I'll be out there and he's gonna run when he sees me. Well, he ran, but toward me, which is like, what are we doing today? It's like, wow, that was when it was hitting me like, I didn't ask him to do any of those things. I didn't force him to do any. He went on a loose rein that whole trip, and everything that came in front of him, he did it. And he built confidence in himself because I didn't force him to do it. He did it voluntarily because that's the relationship, and throughout his life, that was the relationship. He's like, oh, I got this. Yeah, I got this. Whatever I asked him to do. And I took it for granted that that's how it could be with horses. And that's how everybody's relationships with horses were. And then I moved off the ranch and I saw it was not the case. And I'm like, wow, what made him different? What made these experiences with all the horses that I raised on that ranch, why were they different than what I'm seeing out here in the public, in the bigger horse world, with all these problems with horses and all that? And so really he was the one that had to show me like, no, that none of that is right. That's not where you're going to get what you really want, which is safety and relationship and a horse that's loyal and does things without you asking. Okay, just does them because that's part of what you're doing together. Um, and backing up, a very weird thing happened when he was born because he was the first one, well, second horse born on my ranch, but it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon and I was inside. It was around March this time of year, and I'm working on the computer, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I got to go out and check the horse. And his mom, I wasn't expecting she was going to fall out that day. I just get up, I go out, and he's being born in the field. Like, he already called me. He made a phone call to me in utero saying, hey, I'm showing up. And I'm like, I just went out there without thinking anything. I'm like, oh my goodness, who expects a horse to foal at 3 or in the middle of the day? Not normal. Why did I go? Because I felt that tiny little nudge, that communication. So there was something there from the very beginning that he was coming to teach me something different. And my job was to listen to him and find out what it is that he wanted me to know about the relationships between horses and humans. Okay, so that's the rest of the story. Now, as you read the book, if you do, you'll know the rest of his story. Crescendo, River Song Crescendo. And I named him Crush because he crushed it. He was like that. And the softest, sweetest, amazing horse. And he was a stallion up, and I was going to keep him a stallion, but like, nah, um, because he was so easy. I'm like, oh, this is easy. But, you know, stallions don't always have the greatest. I got into that whole thing. They don't have the greatest life sometimes, and they're isolated. So I'm like, maybe the best thing is to geld him. So that was that. But anyway, Dr. Ev, did you have something you wanted to?
Oh, there are a bunch of lovely comments in the chat. Um, uh, let's see. Sarah Hall says, "Thank you for all you do. I'm loving part one of Woven by Words." Um, Trudy Webb says, "I think it's a mental transition phase to the next level of awareness for horses and people alike." Um, and she mentions the confusion effect. Children experience this all the time. Um, Monica said, "I ran into difficulties around other people because I feel their energy and can't always release that feeling while I'm trying to be with my horse. It's a learning process that I'm navigating."
Yeah,
And then
yeah, that's hard.
um, Yeah. Story from Rose. Stories work. I was
Mm.
grooming two this morning. Champ was yawning and licking and chewing like crazy. Um, Jessica Brown says, "What's love without free will anyway?"
Oh, you
And
guys are so amazing.
Paidi, um, I'm thinking of the butterfly wing effect. A little book, a happy story can take you to some wonderful experiences. Um, Rena says, I am looking forward to telling them stories when they are out on the track in the forest. It is our happy place surrounded by the beauty of nature.
Oh.
And Lonnie says, I have seen such a tremendous change in both of my horses since our Zoom sessions with Dr. Fay. They love the stories, both come to me to stand and listen to a story and begin yawning. This is especially impressive because my mare has had so much anxiety that she didn't come to me, stand next to me, or yawn with me. So, very cool.
Yeah, guys are gonna make me cry this morning. And it's like it's these things where when I feel like discouraged in the direction a lot of the horse people are going, and then I hear the stories, and it's like, yeah, that's what keeps me motivated and and fills my soul with like, yeah, there is a reason to keep doing it. As much as the other people are trying to say, yeah, this is silly, or you're, spreading all the stuff like you're gonna get people hurt. It's like, if I thought that, I wouldn't be doing it. I'm going to tell people what I did so I didn't get hurt by horses because I want to create that relationship where they care enough about me that they're going to take the steps to make sure I don't get hurt. Um, and maybe that seems like kind of a Pollyanna type of belief, but I've had situations where I could have gotten hurt really badly by a horse. Um, and it didn't happen. And I was going to tell the story of Tank, my other horse. Should I tell? This is kind of a funny story about um, funny, but not. But um, Tank was the next year's foal. One of the next year's foals. He's the one that was in my first Sacred Spaces book, and the big guy. And I loved his personality because he was so like, oh shucks, no big deal. And he had all the physical talent in the world, like just amazingly talented, but kind of like, oh shucks, I don't know any, like I always called him like a surfer guy if he was something, they're very athletic, but they're like, yeah, I just do my thing, surf. That's all. Um, and it came to this time where I won't go through the whole story, but somebody else was going to ride him at a show because I was going through a divorce and all this other stuff. And so this person was riding him at the horse show. And even though in my gut I knew it wasn't right, I still kind of got bullied into, I better ride this horse for you. Like, okay. So Tank is in the warm-up ring, and this person is kind of very affected by the whole showing thing, and I didn't realize that they weren't handling the pressure of the show very well, and so their mind was all over the place and scared and anxious and all of those things, and he was feeding on that because that's not how I rode him. So I would see him in the warm-up ring, and every time he came around, his ears were like going back and forth like this and looking at me like, what do I do with that that's up here? Oh God, but he's being a good boy. He's like, I don't know what to do. Like he's doing his best going around. And pretty soon I'm like, wow, this is just not working, right? And I'm feeling really bad for him. And he comes back around and I said to him in my mind, Tank, just do what you think you need to do. And I was kind of mad at her by that point. So I'm thinking, that'd be great if she went on a big launch, like up and flying. That was kind of at the point where she had been so nasty to me. And I'm like, wow, if it were me, I would have like launched her really good. So he comes around the next time after I told him that, and she goes to pick up a canter, and it was like in slow motion. He picks up this really soft, like he rocked back, and he picked up this soft canter like he would do, but then oopsie, his one shoulder kind of got soft, and I watched him in slow motion take his body in the front, and he just took her all the way down to the ground, and she fell off on the ground. But he put her all the way down. He was a pretty big horse, but he like slow motion. I'm just gonna deposit you right there. And like, oh, I'm just laughing at him because it's like, oh my God, you're so much better than me. Because you did such a nice thing for her. You needed her off, but you didn't hurt her. You put her down softly, you know. And then he stood up and I remember his eyes looking like, oh, I'm going to be in trouble. I'm like, oh, that was so good. And I felt kind of bad because, I'm not as good as the horses. I didn't have that, like, oh, I feel sorry for her. It's like, no, she wasn't hurt. And she was really lucky that she got a horse that had good relationships with humans and didn't want to hurt them. I don't think if he'd have been dominance-based trained, that that would have been the outcome. And look at the outcome on a lot of these people who have dominance-based trained their horses. Their their launches are a lot more dramatic and the landing is a lot harder. And so that really stuck in my mind. Like, yeah, maybe I'm onto something about how I'm interacting with these horses, that they have a reciprocal thing where I don't want to hurt you either, but this has to end. This has to be done. So, with that said, let's see what Dr. Ev, I think we were talking this week. I'm just going to do a hard left here on the topic. There's been some talk, I guess, about the telepathy tapes, and they still go on. Jessica is familiar with them. I think a lot of people have listened to them here. Yeah, David's listened to a few, I think. Um, and, they're talking all about on that communication with nonverbal people, autistic people, nonverbal. And there's a lot of similarities if you follow that to, like, you'll see, like, a lot of the ways that I interact with horses are very similar to how nonverbal people interact with each other, or I guess is how I would explain that. Jess could probably explain it better, but um, I've been wanting to get somebody to study what's going on when I'm having these nonverbal communications with the horses. And it's very hard because I reach out to people and they go, well, everybody does that. And I'm like, but this is something different, I think, because I'm really have studied this in a scientific way and I've practiced on my brain, and I think there's something that might be very interesting to explore there. I showed Dr. Evans, like, when they go in, should I do that one? The reenactment, this is what they're going to find in my brain. Like, nothing. Like, that's it. That's what my brain looks like inside when it's communicating. So, I've reached out to people and it's like the big no, no, no. And I'm like, you wouldn't be interested in this from a scientist that knows what I've done and what I'm doing. I can describe a lot of the things that I'm doing when I'm communicating, and I've practiced these things. Why are they not wanting to explore that? Um, so I may do an email. I think let's see, Jane. I think she said she had emailed the telepathy tapes, and it's been like crickets, right? Nobody's interested. Because everybody does it. I'm like, no, I don't think so. Um, so what I'm thinking is I'll write something, maybe Dr. Ev will, if anybody here wants to approach them about, maybe there's something to be learned in this, because the parallels between the Sacred Spaces book and what they talk about in the telepathy tapes, I mentioned all of those things, but kind of undercover. So the sacred space is the hill that they talk about in the telepathy tapes. I mentioned nonverbal communication. I mentioned a short story about speaking to my neighbor's grandson who was autistic in a nonverbal way, and he responded in a very obvious way that could not be explained. And he had never done that behavior before, and his grandmother's jaw was on the floor. So there's something there. It's not specific to people. It's about our evolution and how we're going to be communicating in the future, maybe, if we go down this path, because it's the ability is in all of us. And I would really love in my lifetime to be able to have some data on that and go forward because I think it would be helpful. So I'm going to probably send another email to them. And Dr. Ev, if anybody here wants to reach out or say anything, and I thought, oh, I need a GoFundMe so I can keep going. It's like, no, no, just help by maybe saying, yeah, this might be, warrant some investigation. If you've worked with me, if you've seen what's happened, it's down to where I can say something and it happens. It's like that's science. you know, I can, and it's not to blow my own horn. This is really hard for me. Dr. Ebb knows how it's like just writing an email to one group. It's like I agonized about that for days. And like everything I say sounds silly and stupid and they're going to reject me. That's where I go back to. And it's like, oh, really hard for me to like try to blow my own horn maybe. But if anybody here has had experiences and they wanted to maybe reach out and say, maybe this is something worth studying, and maybe there's some other additional information that could be garnered from someone who's done it for 50 years and has studied why this works. That's where I feel like I'd be a great contributor, but I can't get anybody to listen to that. And I don't have the funds to do it myself. So I'm kind of stuck in this kind of weird place of, oh no, we're going to lose some very important data. Um, and again, they might find nothing. Who knows? That would be, finding nothing is just as important as finding something. Because maybe being in that nothing place is really where it is. So if you wanted to put in the chat where if anybody's interested, they could reach out there again.
Yeah, I put the contact in the chat.
Okay. And I think for you guys that I may have mentioned telepathy tapes before. If you're interested, you can go and look. It's a podcast and it's available pretty much on all the streaming platforms that do podcasts. And I would recommend you start at the very beginning because they really talk about the nonverbal communication with autistic children and how their world, even though they don't use words, is very rich and actually them getting information from places that we don't normally look. Okay. That internet of intuition, place. And Dr. Abbott, it's funny, I'll share with you because it was funny this morning because we were talking and I don't know, why did we bring up, oh, I was going to write to the University of Virginia. That was the one that got rejected from the University of Virginia is doing a study. And so I told Dr. Ev, it's like, oh, well, I got rejected from the University of Virginia, and I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm like, but it's a prestigious school. After all, Katie Couric, the reporter, anchor person, she graduated from the University of Virginia. And then Dr. Ev goes, how do you know that? I'm like, I don't know. How do I know that? And so I Googled it. Oh, yeah, she graduated from the University of Virginia. Where did that come from? I don't even follow her or care, like where was that connection made? Where did that plug in? When I mentioned University of Virginia, somewhere in the field it plugged in. Oh, there's a really prominent person that went to that school that you would know of. This is how this kind of information I think needs to be explored and studied because that was not in my conscious awareness. That was nowhere that I've ever can remember. And I'm not a trivia person that would remember things like that. How did that happen? And these kind of things are happening more often. And I'm doing the same thing with the horses. I'm thinking of when I have a horse over here, like Lonnie's, and I tell them a story about a horse over here, like Dr. Ev's. And what I am is like the switchboard operator in the old time, where they had, if you watch those movies, they plug in that call, and then they take the other wire and they plug it into that call. Now there's a connection. This is how this works. It's in the quantum field, even though I don't say quantum field. I don't need to know how big words or what big words I need to use to explain that. All I explain it with like the old switchboard operators here and here. That's my level of understanding of the quantum field. That's all I need to know because it works. I don't need to mire myself down in all the minutia and all the big words and all that stuff and pretend like I'm a physicist. No, I'm not a physicist. I don't understand it at that level. I understand it at the simplistic level, and it works. So um, that was just a weird example of when you step into this work, it's going to start to happen like that. We've got these connections and this knowledge that does not come from its normal source. Okay, because now you are in universal knowledge. And all of this AI, that's what bothers me about AI is that we already can do that. But we're going to turn it over to a technology instead. No, we have not explored our own capabilities enough to know we could do that. And Monica's
Yeah.
true. Like the changes that are happening in the universe, it's so much faster, this type of communication. It's so much clearer if we're open to it. So, and it's so freeing, I think, when you've realized like you have your own internet stuck in your brain and it can connect to whatever information you want. It's just learning how to do that. Um, and that's part of my big book is the deep way when I write down the recipe for this. It's like all the skill sets I think are involved in being able to do this. Um, and people go, well, that's too hard. It's like, well, then I don't know. It's up to you. It's up to each person whether they want to work hard at something or or not. So, David, did you have something you
It,
wanted to?
Yeah, I had along this one. I had a quote actually I sent you. I found it in another field of study, but it applies here. And it says, "The simple. This is the simple, or it says, wisdom is the simple that probes and comprehends the complex, not the simplistic that ignores the complex." And we humans want to make everything complex. That's where we gravitate to. And a lot of people will start with you, but they'll want to go think, oh, this needs to be more complex and don't understand the wisdom, the power of how simplicity or not, it's simple, but not simplistic.
Right.
And it's the power is being in the simple, probing that complex, but it's not simplistic. And people get that confused.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's, you can baffle people with a lot of big words and they think, oh, that's great. And they're on it. And it's like, oh, that person must be really smart because look at the big words. And I have very simple words but actual results, right? Because again, this was always my big complaint with with academia was that they know a lot of information, but they cannot make it understandable to the actual person or people that need to use that information. It's still too complex. So yeah, and I feel like that's what I'm trying to do is take complex and make it simple. But then I shoot myself in the foot at the same time by people thinking I'm too simplistic. So yeah, it's another example of the Goldilocks effect, right? Of what we've been programmed to believe. And so, yeah, what do we do? What do we do? And my belief is horses can show us the way through of reconnecting ourselves. Even, that switchboard operator that connected to different calls. No, we need to go first here and connect this call that go through our whole body, because that's where we have to start with this, is understanding ourselves, and then we can connect with others. We're getting there.
Okay. Hi. Sorry about that.
Hi.
Hi. I just wanted to say something because y'all know how I have struggled in the past with Beauregard and the trailer. And a couple of weeks ago, for the first time, I got both Hansel and Beauregard in the trailer. They traveled beautifully. We went to my friends. I won't go into all the details, but there were three times that Beauregard refused to either get into the trailer or walk into a stall. But each time, the softness game and the connection with him worked. So that was huge, that 3 times in 2 hours, I dealt with the same problem, but we got through it with no bloodshed or tears. The other thing that was interesting, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. The other thing that was interesting is Beauregard refused to walk in the stall. It was the trailer without wheels. Got him in, turned him around, walked him back out. What a good boy he was. I walked away.
All right, there we go. I was on a conference call.
Oops, go ahead.
Okay. So I got Beauregard, in and out of the stall. No big deal. I went to grab some brushes to brush the two of them at my friend's barn. And I came back out, and Hansel had gone into the stall where Beauregard just was, laid down to roll, and got himself cast badly. And he's 17 hands, 1,200 pounds, big warm blood, and he is up against the wall with his legs curled so tight his hooves are touching his belly. And of course, my instinct was to panic, and then I took a deep breath, and this is where the stories come in, and about keeping yourself safe with the stories. And I said, Hansel, I've never seen you like this, but I had a dark bay horse that used to do this in the field. He would lay down with his feet uphill. I know what to do. Lay there and let me get a lead rope. And he laid there quietly. I got the lead rope. I had to lay on his belly to get the lead rope under his hind hooves and wrapped around his hind legs. And I'm trying to flip him over. And he stayed calm. I held a picture in my mind of doing this with my other horse in the past. And unfortunately, I just couldn't do it. He was too heavy. And I said, okay, I tell you what, I'm going to loosen the lead rope. We're going to put it around your front hooves. The reason I'm doing this by myself is because, of course, nobody else is in the barn. So I go to reposition to put it around his front hooves, and I'm like, maybe we can get your front end over because you can use your neck to help me. And with that, he takes his front hooves, puts them on the boards, shoves himself back a couple of times to where he does have enough room to get his front feet underneath him. And he stood up and he shook and licked like, okay, I'm fine. And that was that. And it was amazing to me how holding the picture of me working with my previous horse, staying calm, explaining what I was doing, visualizing the big dark bay body flipping over. And then when that didn't work, saying, well, let's try the front end. And he did that himself.
Wow. That's so good. Yeah. And so you employed a lot of the skill sets, like the breathing and the stories and and the emotional regulation and
well, when I saw him laying down like that, because I don't even have stalls where I board. It's all pasture turnout. I've never seen Hansel in a stall really. And I'm like, oh dear Lord, there's nobody here to help me. This is the first time I've encountered this with this horse. And I'm like, Don't worry about it. You got it. I thought about your voice, Dr. Faye. You got this.
You got this. You can do it.
And Hansel just stayed calm. He was like, okay. And I said, we're kind of in a pickle here, but we'll sort it out. We'll get this figured out. He's like, I
Wow.
know. Got it.
Wow. And isn't that, that in the old time we could have easily panicked and then brought the horse into that panic and the thrashing and all that instead, just thinking the way through it. That was beautifully done. Awesome.
Well, thank you for your help.
Well, thank you for sharing. This is so cool. And I think again, we just don't always regard their level of intelligence as big. A lot of times I was taught horses are not that smart and they don't, yeah, they are. If you ever spent time on a ranch for any length of time, you would see how intelligent they are, you know, and any animals. So I always go, oh, maybe you didn't think of this one. Here's something else you could do. And he followed through. He figured it out. He got confidence. He could get himself out of a pickle again if he needs to. That was lovely. So, okay. Well, this is a wonderful beginning to my Saturday, and hopefully a wonderful end to some people's Saturday. Again, next month, in the newsletter, I'll announce when we're gonna figure out how to do the book club. See, I could easily do the book club tomorrow, but I have this thing where technology is always always a little bit dicey. We think it works for everybody else, and then we do it, and something happens. So, with that said, we'll do our best to get the simplest program we can do, simplest way to do this, to start with. And I think for those of you that want to come to it, I watched one of the videos again with Nancy and her horse and the stories, and it's like, oh, it still just fascinates me. And we'll look at all the little nuances to know, is that horse reacting to the story in a positive way, or what is going on, and really start to hone the ability to notice these things that are happening that may not be really obvious. And I think that's an important part of this horsemanship. And as you practice this, you start to notice the internal things that cannot even be seen that are happening in the horse. And that's a consequence of just doing the breathing and going through the process, that over time you just start to go, oh, now I have more awareness of the energy field and what it's communicating. And it just happens one day, not because you tried to make it happen, but just because you've practiced on these things like the breathing and the body scan and the emotional awareness and all of those things. And it just leads you to that spot. So with that said, I will close off the meeting today, and I look forward to seeing all of you or some of you next month. And this is just, for me, a lot of fun because I can verbalize some of the things that have happened and share with that. And sometimes I write so much that sometimes writing is just like, even writing posts in Facebook is just, it's so difficult. And I sit there and I can't think of a thing to say then. So I apologize for that, but hopefully this kind of makes up a little bit for that lack of engagement on that platform, because it's a little tough for me on that platform. It's good, but it's the one that always shows me the gremlin thing right before I come on this thing, and it shows up and it goes, oh, this person like thinks you're an idiot. And I was like, oh, great, that's what I wanted to see right before I got on. Or this person believes in the opposite of you, and they're doubling down on all the aggression toward the horses. And I'm like, oh no, that's not good. Don't get me riled up. So, all right. With that said, thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. And I feel like you're the people going forward and making all those other connections, switchboard operators, we used to call them. And My grandmother used to do that. She was a switchboard operator. So I'm just a different type of switchboard operator, I guess. So here we go. All right. Take care, everybody. Hopefully we'll see you next month. Have a wonderful spring now that it's spring. All right. Take care.